It might feel like you're always walking on eggshells. You're constantly giving in just to keep the peace, that you have no authority, that your child determines everything for the entire family, like you're being held hostage by their rigidity. But again, I just want to keep coming back to this. This is skill-based. It isn't willful behavior. It's cognitive rigidity, a lack of cognitive flexibility skills. Their brain literally struggles to shift gears. They're not choosing to be inflexible, they're stuck. Hi there, and welcome to the Brain First Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Devine, and I am a therapist, parent coach, and educator who supports parents that are raising children, teens, and young adults with brain-based differences and challenging behavioral symptoms. If you are a parent or caregiver of a child who has intense, confusing, relentless, or sometimes even scary behaviors, you are in the right place, and I am so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Eileen, and I am your host for the Brain First Parenting Podcast. Today we're going to talk about something that sits right at the heart of parenting. And I would say that it's also at the heart of some of the most painful, confusing moments that we have with our kids. We are talking today about relational cognitive skills. Understanding what relational cognitive skills are specifically, we're going to get into that today, and how they apply to your child, we'll also get into that. It can completely change the way you understand your child's behavior. And when that happens, it also changes how you respond to that behavior. So super important. That's why I wanted to cover it today. So let's dive right in. I would say that many of the hardest behaviors that parents face, the ones that I'm hearing about every day when I sit with parents who share this experience that you and I share, parenting kids with brain-based differences, fragile nervous systems, and challenging behavioral symptoms, the behaviors they describe, they are not about defiance, disrespect, a lack of discipline. Those aren't the hardest behaviors. Now, those are hard. Don't get me wrong. But the hardest behaviors that I hear about are about a child's brain struggling with very specific skills related to being in relationship with others. Okay, so skills like shifting gears when plans change so that, the needs of the group are considered versus the needs of that child. Being able to tolerate frustration when others want to do something different than you or plans don't go your way. Being able to see another person's point of view and take it into consideration and maybe change what you do in response to that. It's about staying regulated. When people don't act in the way that you want them to, or things don't go as expected, to be able to tolerate the frustration that's involved in that. So here's a really important part to all of this, and we talk about this all the time on this podcast, but it's always worth repeating. These behaviors that I just mentioned, they're not character flaws. They are brain-based skills. And when those skills are lagging behind because a brain has developed differently, because it works differently for some reason, we see that difference reflected through behavior. Now, here's where things get tricky. When kids struggle with things like, let's say reading or attention or academics, or maybe they struggle with sensory integration. So like a loud environment is too much for them. We're often able to see that for what it is and say, okay, like this is hard for them and it's not their fault and they need more support, right? It doesn't feel personal. But when they struggle in relationships, it feels different. It feels very, very personal. When your child does things like, they don't seem to care that they hurt somebody, or they can't compromise ever. They can't seem to consider other people. They seem very, very self-focused. Or maybe they react in ways that feel unfair or disrespectful or just kind of mean. It can land as deeply painful for us. Very frustrating. There can be a lot of resentment, a lot of worry and fear about that, right? Parents often start to wonder things like, will my child ever be able to have a meaningful relationship? Will they ever develop empathy? Am I raising someone who can connect with others, who can be in a relationship with another person? And that fear is real and it's so heavy. But here's what I want to ground you in. What you're seeing when you see those behaviors, it is not a lack of caring, right? It's not about your child's character. It's a lagging skill, and skills can grow over time. All right, so what are relational cognitive skills? Relational cognitive skills are the brain's ability to navigate relationships, to engage in give and take, to show empathy, to repair after conflict, to build meaningful connections over time. And these skills rely on multiple parts of the brain working together consistently, reliably, over time. Okay, so the prefrontal cortex, for example, we need that working for planning and for regulation. The limbic system for emotional regulation, our response to threat. Social processing networks for perspective taking, for connection. There are lots of other skills that we could talk about. The ability to recall what was said and connect the dots and understand, oh, yeah, I probably should be the one to apologize here, or I had a part in this, or of course, they are mad at me now because A plus B equals C. Lots of our kids struggle with being able to do that. Communication, being able to put words to what they are experiencing in their bodies, their feelings, to be able to reflect and have insight and tell you what they were thinking when they said that awful, hurtful thing. How could they not know that that was going to have the impact that it did on the person they said it to? Those are all skills. And here's the other piece. When a child is stressed, those skills, which can be really difficult for them to access at baseline on a good day, those skills go offline. The thinking brain is offline. So what it means to have a child whose nervous system is more fragile is that their capacity to manage stress and keep their thinking brain online, stay within that window of tolerance, it's limited. Their capacity is very, very, very small for most of our kids. And so they have a tiny amount of stress, like a conflict with a sibling, being told no, not having things go as they expected, right? Minor stressors for us, frustrations for us, big stress for them. And that tiny amount of stress causes a big reaction because they do not have the capacity to handle it. So even if they can access these relational cognitive skills at times, in hard moments, they often can't access them. Okay. So we're going to talk about exactly what the relational cognitive skills are. I'm going to go into more depth in that. And I want you to think about this as the human experience. So for example, when you are in relationship with another person and you've had a very stressful day for whatever reason, or maybe there's some chronic stressor in your life, you're probably not your best in that relationship with that other person. And it's not because you're a terrible person. It's because stress has the same effect on you. And you don't have access to the skills like emotional regulation, thinking of others, inhibiting the impulse to say that thing that comes to your mind when your brain goes offline. Okay. So it's not just our kids where this happens. It is a skill base that we all need to be in relationship with others. The difference is the intensity of the stress, how it impacts their fragile nervous system is different for us. I'm going to say us in the speaking from a neurotypical privileged place. And those skills are pretty robust for us as adults. Again, speaking very generally here. And so it's not skills that we're lagging way behind in. They're working well, they're working consistently. Our brain works well and works consistently for us. Okay? So as we walk through these three main relational skill categories, I want you to think about where you hear your child in what I'm talking about. Does this describe them? Does this describe a skill that they may struggle with. Okay, so the first is social awareness and interpersonal skills. This is your child's ability to read the room, to understand social cues, to notice how their behavior affects others, to be able to respond in age-appropriate ways, to be able to respond in ways that build connection. And when these specific skills are lagging, you might see a child who is just too much with peers, right? They don't know when to just kind of knock it off, when enough is enough. Someone who takes jokes too far, they cannot read the room, right? Maybe it's a child who seems confused when asked to apologize. Like, why would I do that? They truly cannot see their part in what just happened without a lot of support. It could look like misreading the tone or the body language or the intent of another person. Here's the key piece to remember in those moments when you're seeing this specific challenging behaviors. It is not that they don't care. It's not that they, want to be alone and not be in connection with anyone. It's that they can't connect their behavior to its impact. Okay, the second relational cognitive skill area is flexible thinking and perspective shifting. This is a big one. This is a child who needs things to go exactly their way. There is little to no flexibility there. This is a child who cannot go with the flow. They really struggle when plans change. This is a child who can't let it go. They just can't get past whatever happened. They may melt down over being told no. They seem completely unwilling to consider someone else's perspective. It looks very selfish, honestly. And as the parent, not only can this appear to be, well, this child is just so selfish, it is so exhausting, right? This set of lagging cognitive skills is so hard. It might feel like you're always walking on eggshells. You're constantly giving in just to keep the peace, that you have no authority, that your child determines everything for the entire family, like you're being held hostage by their rigidity. But again, I just want to keep coming back to this. This is skill-based. It isn't willful behavior. It's cognitive rigidity, a lack of cognitive flexibility skills. Their brain literally struggles to shift gears. They're not choosing to be inflexible, they're stuck. And when we can shift in those really hard moments to, why are they doing this to me, right? And we shift to, their brain's stuck again. Like, how do I help? How do I help them get unstuck? Or they don't even have the awareness. Oh my goodness, they don't have the awareness that others have this other perspective than their own. And how can I help cultivate that awareness for them? When we can make that shift, everything begins to change, because we're no longer in this mindset of just punishing the behavior, right? But instead, we're in this mindset of, what's the lagging skill and how do I help build that skill? So for this particular relational cognitive skill set, I want to mention 2 previous podcast episodes. Episode 3 is Help Your Rigid Thinking Child Become More Flexible. And episode 8 is Help Your Child Break the Perseveration Loop. So I will make sure to mention those in the show notes, but wanted to mention them because they're super relevant to the skills that we just talked about. All right, the last relational cognitive skill category is emotional regulation, emotional expression, and emotional response. So this set of cognitive skills, it really describes how kids experience emotions, express them, and respond to them. Okay? And when these skills are strong, a person can feel big emotions without becoming overwhelmed, without getting engulfed in them. They can pause before they impulsively say the hurtful thing or do the hurtful thing. They can pause before reacting. They can express feelings in constructive ways. They can recover from emotional upheaval, from those big emotions, and move forward. They don't get stuck in that. When they're lagging, we see big reactions. to really small stressors, right? We see explosiveness, difficulty calming down. It looks like not being able to put feelings into words. It looks like getting stuck in emotions. And again, this is not a choice. It's a skill gap. And what I'd also say, especially about this skill gap in particular, it's super distressing for our kids, right? To get stuck in those emotions, to not be able to calm down, to have like constantly this dysregulation, big reactions over these small stressors that life throws their way. Super distressing for them. The most important reframe, I think, for us as parents is this, that there are skills involved in being in a successful reciprocal relationship with another person and reminding ourselves, yes, this is very common for kids with brain-based differences to lag behind in all of them at times, but it doesn't even take that for it to get challenging for these kids. The other really important part of this reframe is what I've said a few times. I'll say it again. It's not about your child's character. I know it can feel that way in these hard moments, but I want to keep coming back to this, what we know to be true. It's based in science. It's about skills that they are developing. And there's hope in that, right? There's hope in that because it's actionable, because skills can be supported, they can be practiced, they can be strengthened over time. Now, will it be linear? Nope. I wish I had another answer, but I want you to remember the on and off days. We've talked about that here as well. There's going to be on and off days. It's looking at the progress over a long period of time. Will it happen on your timeline? Probably not. I know that these behaviors are really, really distressing for you. Believe me, I know. And the progress never comes fast enough, right? But I want to remind you of that when we have that urgency and we want to see it come quickly, we set ourselves up for failure because it's typically not possible. Growth is possible, but it's going to happen likely on a different timeline than we expected. What does this mean for you as a parent? We always come back to this shift, right? A shift from a behavioral lens, that this behavior is on purpose, being done to me with malice intent, to a brain first lens, which means we shift from control, wanting to control the child and their behavior, to curiosity. What is this behavior about? What is it telling me about their lagging skills and what's happening with their nervous system? It takes us from punishment, trying to figure out what is the right punishment, the magical punishment that will stop this behavior. We move from that to where is more support needed? Where can I help my child build these skills that are, getting in their way, right? It moves us from they just won't to, okay, they can't yet. And how do I try to meet them where they are today and start building skills from there? It means looking at hard moments and asking that question, right? What skill is getting in the way right now? Because when you can see the lagging skill behind the behavior, you can begin to support the skill that is causing the difficult behavior in the first place. So, the parent experience, you know that I always like to make sure we highlight it. And this episode really deserves that. I want you to know that when I say I know how hard it is to reach for connection over and over and over again and work so hard to build a relationship with someone who really struggles with the skills that we've been talking about, these relational cognitive skills, it is as hard as you think it is, okay? It's hard on your nervous system, especially when the behaviors feel personal, they feel hurtful or scary. It requires so much endurance of you. That's why you feel so tired. And I know that it can be devastatingly sad at times. You worry about your relationship with your child. You have maybe frustrations about how that's going, maybe resentment about how it's going. And at the same time, you also worry about, are they going to be lonely? Are they going to have deep and rich and meaningful relationships in their life if they don't have these skills. Usually the first reframe is if they continue to act this way towards other people. But even when we recognize that there's a skill deficit, it can still be really scary and sad. It's easy to get into that place of fear about what that future holds for them, right? So I want to acknowledge all of that. But I also want to acknowledge that there is so much hope here too. And I really hope you hear that in this episode. Your child is not broken. They are not a bad person. They want to be in connection with others, including you, most definitely you. It's just really, really hard for them to make that happen when they are still developing these relational skills that requires. If this is something you're navigating with your child right now, know that I am sending you so much compassion as you work to support them in the intense ways I know they require. Know that I'm sending you compassion, and hopefully you can cultivate some self-compassion as you reflect on all of this as well. Alrighty. Thanks as always for listening in, and until next time, take care. Hey, I was hoping I could ask for a really quick favor before we say goodbye. If you enjoy this podcast and you find the information that I have to share valuable to you as a parent or a provider, I would really appreciate if you took just a few minutes to provide this podcast with a 5-star review and a quick comment with how this information has positively impacted you. It is the number one way for me to reach more parents like you and I, that could really use some hope and some support as they continue to do their best to parent their child who lives with a brain-based difference and challenging behavioral symptoms. Thanks so much.